It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. I guess we'd spoken a little bit earlier in the week, and I found our conversation just really intriguing. And we were just kind of talking about big picture conservative stuff. You know what I mean? And big picture limited government stuff. And I just want to say I really appreciate what you had to say, and I'd love for you to share it with our audience.
Well, I appreciate that, Paul. And, I enjoyed the conversation as well. And, it's something that I've spent quite a bit of time, looking at. And naturally, as a legislator and a senator, I focus, primarily on state issues. Now, as a Republican, as a conservative, I also think about, what it means to be a conservative and what are the values and the principles that we're fighting for. Foremost is we're fighting for freedom and liberty. And, that government doesn't necessarily exist to per se make our lives easier. It exists to protect our freedoms and our liberties and make sure those are not being infringed upon. It's our responsibility, to make sure that we're doing for ourselves, that we're helping out our neighbors and our communities. That's not, some distant government's responsibility. That's our responsibility. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that we had talked about, Paul, was, that was kind of interesting that some of the biggest recipients of federal spending were some of the reddest, most conservative states.
Yeah.
New York and California, those are payers. They're the payers. Arkansas is a taker, along with a lot of other states. It's not just Arkansas. And I think that, as I started looking at that, got me thinking, at which point should we not be having a conversation, not just amongst, other elected officials, but amongst our constituents about, the role of government and what should be the responsibility of the federal government, what should be the responsibility of the state government, and what should be the responsibility of local government.
And that's why I thought it was so intriguing, because it really is big picture stuff. Some people might know, I'm sure some do, that Arkansas, when it comes to the amount of our budget, $20+ billion when you take state and federal spending, so much of that is us taking more than we actually send to Washington, D.C. I mean, some people might know that, but they might not know to what extent. And more importantly, they might not have ever thought that, that this is something that we should work to change.
Absolutely. And I think, Paul, one of the tough things is that when you see spending, reach you directly, or your community, or your county, it's kind of, everybody has that thought of, well, it's about time. We've seen all this money getting thrown away and, just wasted in all these other areas. And finally, some of that hard-earned tax money, hard-spent tax money coming back to me or to my county or my state. And I understand that thought process. Some of the realities is that sometimes we get more than what we're paying up there. And, one of the great things, one of the things that the federal government does is if they can't force a state to do something constitutionally, they open up a checkbook. And they bribe us to do it.
Yeah.
And, the more you take, and the more money you take, the more addicted you become to that money, and the cycle kind of repeats itself. And, a lot of the, for conservatives, when you talk about your freedom and liberty.
Hey, Scott, you're breaking up just a little bit. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Sitting here, let me know when I get to a good spot.
Okay.
I'm going to move. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It was just a little bit there, so we kind of missed something. You said something about conservatives, so I'm sure it was great.
I don't know. I don't think the Russians are hacking into my phone. I hope not.
Who knows? NSA too, maybe. Who knows?
But no. Getting to the to conservatism, the things that we're fighting for, and you talk about your freedom and your liberty, and some of that's going to come with hard work and sacrifice, and it's not necessarily about making government making life easier. That's our responsibility. Mm-hmm. Government can be responsible for our national defense, for infrastructure, for fire protection, for police protection. But what about that community center that we all want to have in our local communities? Is that people in Delaware need to be funding that, or is that something that we need to be funding at the local level with maybe some state assistance? And again, this is a conversation that I think is not being had in politics. It's not being had, really, I think, in society at large. And I kind of feel that that's one of the things that I enjoy talking about. And I think that when I visit with my constituents, that it's something that I get feedback on. And
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We got a jam-packed show for you today. We're kicking things off live in studio. We've got State Representative Dan Sullivan with us. Dan, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you squeezing me into your jam-packed day.
Well, you're part of it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. You're contributing to it. Let's just get this out of the way. You know, what are you here for? I know you wanted to come on and make an announcement.
Yes, I have. Am announcing my campaign, starting my campaign right now, my re-election bid, and I plan to run for the House again for House District 53.
And go ahead and tell all your listeners where House District 53 is.
Sure, that's part of Jonesboro, Caraway, Nettleton, Monette. It's the northeastern corner of Craighead County.
There you go.
And I've just had a great, this be running for a third term. I've really enjoyed my first 2 terms of serving our District 53. I've had some great feedback from our constituents. I was out at a bee farm yesterday. Of course, we had several big events in the past few months with the dicamba issues, and I met with several farmers all around my district and others, and appreciate the governor coming up to the Leachville area and Manila, meeting with all the farmers up there, and met with him on both sides of that issue. But just been really exciting to be a legislator. I appreciate the support I've gotten and look forward to running again.
And I just want to mention, so this is Dan Sullivan. You were a Hero of Freedom award winner at the Calvin Coolidge Awards. That's Conduit for Commerce. There's Conduit for Commerce scorecard, the number 1 ranking out of House members. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, yes, and I think one of the things I'm most proud of is when I have run for election, I've told my constituents what my core values were. And I've stuck to those and voted that way, regardless of the pressure, regardless of other extraneous things that happen. I've kept my word to the people that voted for me. And those that kind of may oppose my vision or my views, at least they know where I stand.
Yeah.
And I've been true and honest to those. We had that town hall meeting just a few weeks ago.
That.
Sure.
Yeah, it's the town hall meeting, and I know you well enough now to know that you enjoy the criticism in terms of the a respectful debate and that sort of thing. I thought of that town hall, though, there's some criticism. I mean, the liberal media is trying to do this too, where they're trying to tie tragic circumstances, a young boy's death, and they're trying to tie it to you. And I know that was brought up at that town hall.
It was, and that's what one expects at town halls frequently. You expect people to try to make misstatements or to spin a story a certain way. But I think the people were very willing to hear what I had to say, and I think accepted the facts there. And that's what I try to tie things to. If you can persuade me that the facts, I'm wrong on the facts, I don't have the necessary information, I'm very willing to change my mind. But I know what my core values are. I'm going to stick to those, and I'm going to listen to people that have the facts of the subject. And in that town hall, a lot of it was people wanting to express their opinion. And that's fine, and they certainly have a right and opportunity to do that. I got a call from a gentleman over in Black Oak the other day that needed his state representative. And I went over there and met with him and a couple of folks, and he had some significant issues out there with some neighbors and some other things. We talked about it, kind of worked through some of that. when I was leaving, the gentleman said, you're going to make my father roll over in his grave. And I kind of looked at him. I said, well, what's going on? And he said, well, when I called you, you called me back in 5 minutes. A day later, you were here on my property talking to me and offering to help. He said, I've never voted for a Republican before, but I'm going to guess I'm going to have to.
And that's what makes the relative spin in the grave,
that's what makes them spin. But, we serve our district, and when people call, and this came up in that town hall, that I mentioned that when people call and need their representative, we don't ask what party they are. They don't ask me what party they are or what party I am. They just know they need help. They call their state representative, and they're seeking assistance, and that's what we do.
Yeah. We're talking with Dan Sullivan. He's announced his campaign for re-election for House District 53, which is in northeast Arkansas. You mentioned dicamba. Now, I just think briefly touched on dicamba, but I've talked to a farmer about this and talked to folks. So what's the deal? We have a dicamba situation where, you have this drift and it's causing damage to soybeans.
Well, first of all, you have great technology. You've got people that have developed the technology to make certain weeds, make the farming easier, less costly,
right,
more effective, more efficient. The technology is there. It's just that the dicamba, there's drift, other things that are going on that can cause damage to their neighbors' crops. So we had a task force. As a matter of fact, the task force is already done. You'll be glad to hear that. They've already had their recommendation, and they've completed their work and finished. But that task force, I think, has recommended that dicamba not be used for a year or so until we can do further study. But, the folks that want the technology, we need it. And so we need to continue to study, continue to develop that kind of technology because our farmers need that resource.
Yeah, I no doubt, farming, it has, gotten, you want it to get easier. You want it to get more efficient and stuff like that. I find it interesting, just the whole, I don't know, not a lot of people have paid as much attention to it. I think it is a big issue because I think, like anything, there's a lot of money that's involved here. If you look at the research that's gone into a product like dicamba, but then you have people, this is indirectly related to it, but we had a murder over this stuff. If you remember, last year.
That was in District 53.
Yeah, you had two farmers that got in a fight, and one of them, killed the other.
Yeah, it's a significant issue, and I appreciate the governor's the way he handled that with moving that to the Legislative Council, then to the Agri Committee where I am, and we were able to ask questions and get the data and get the information, and then they made a decision quickly. For the government, it moved really pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And now they're studying it again to seeing what further decisions can be made. But, as you mentioned, agriculture is one of our top financial areas for the state of Arkansas. It's where our money is and it's where our businesses are. So it's very important. I was at Coy Bee Farm the other day.
Yes, I know them.
Yeah, the Coys they operate in Mississippi and California, and they have products in 65 different stores around the state, some here in Jonesboro. I found out that the watermelon farmers have to ask the beekeepers how many bees they're going to bring to their farm before they'll determine how many acres of watermelons they'll plant. New information to me.
Wow.
But it's what you do as a state representative is go visit your businesses, whether it's farming industry, pharmacy industry, hospitals, whatever those are, and visit with the folks, schools and education. Visit with the people that are engaged in that business and help them be more efficient and more effective at what they do.
Yeah, we're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan. I want to ask about this past session just real quick. So, I know you mentioned that the governor was up here, but has the governor contacted you at all about really anything concerning legislation last session or anything like that?
Well, they had several significant votes, and I didn't have the opportunity to visit with the governor or his staff on any of the votes that I was a part of. And, again, I think that goes back to my core values. It's clear not only to the governor but to others what my core values are. And if they don't if there's information out there that doesn't sway that or change that, then my vote's not going to change. It's not for sale. I'm not going to swap or change votes over issues frequently. There are times that I will. Matter of fact, Paul, the healthcare debate's up right now, and I've been asked by Director Gillespie of DHS to sit in with a group of legislators and talking about the changes. And Director Gillespie's really done a good job. I've got only good things to say about her. I know she's from a law firm.
I'm very skeptical. I mean, there's no question.
I am too.
And that's good to have a healthy skepticism. Yeah. But so you somebody that has been working with her. My problem for folks, if you just now joining us with Cindy Gillespie, is where projects that she has worked on. Mitt Romney Care, which was the basis for Obamacare. The lobbying firm she comes from, Denton's, which is an international lobbying firm. I kind of feel like she's here on assignment, but
well, let us know. Let's assume she is.
Right. Okay.
If we have a good outcome, that's a good thing.
I would agree if the outcome is good.
Right.
So tell us what direction this is all headed right now. I mean, there's nobody really entertaining the idea anymore that we're going to end Medicaid expansion, unless, of course, the federal government gets into gear again.
Sure. Well, we could see legislation on that. I haven't seen it come up yet, but we could have legislation. But what Director Gillespie and through the governing collaboration with the governor's office, I'm sure, is working on some things to reduce the number of people. We're on the roll. We're moving from 138% to 100%. And there's nothing final until it's final, but most likely that will get us back in the neighborhood of the original projections of the program. We originally did this in 2013, and back then we had some projections out there that
215,000 people.
Well,
then 225, then 250, but yeah.
So there've been several projections out there, but the goal is to get us back in that neighborhood, and so we go from 100 to 100 and. From 138 to 100%, that's going to reduce that considerably. She's put in a lot of work on the work requirement that will be out there. And again, nothing is final until the federal government approves it. But I've seen some of the documents that we're working with now that are really encouraging for me. And although it may not go as far as I want it to go, we're moving in the right direction. So this conversation kind of started out about, what would I be willing to support in trading my vote? I want us to get moving in a better, more conservative direction. So if this legislation comes out that it does decrease the number, if there really are some true work requirements out there, while taking in consideration the obligation that we have to help the most needy, that can be a good thing. And we need to start moving in that direction, and we haven't for several years.
You're exactly right about that. Do you think, here's my question, let's say, this all gets approved and this all goes forward. My question has been, will there, because it's a part-time work requirement, because if you work 40 hours a week at minimum wage, I believe you're going to make too much money to qualify for the program, or at least, but so will there be anybody who doesn't work that gets kicked off the program? And I know there's steps that they say, you've got to do this. You've got to fail to meet the requirements, I think, for 3 months or 2 months. I've heard a couple different things. Nothing really concrete. But I guess that, to me, will be the proof in the pudding. After it all happens, let's see a list how many people actually didn't work and were removed from the program, because, that'll be how you know if it actually is working.
Yeah, and that's the data.
Yeah,
that's the data we need.
Yeah.
But we've gone through some other Medicaid reform issues. They're trying to change some of the programs that my company's involved in with developmental disabilities and with behavioral health. We're cutting, I think, pretty close to $70 million, and those cuts are available and able, and we can do those if we'll kind of change the business model, and we can continue to provide services to the people that are most needy. Kind of take it. It's similar to the work requirement. Who are some of the people that are not as needy? Here's how much money we have to spend. So how do we focus those resources to the people most in need? And we're trimming that, and it's been done. Those manuals passed. I supported them. I think many of them take effect October 1. So we're moving in the right direction on a lot of these things. Is it as far as we want to go? No. But we've got an election coming up. I encourage your listeners to find conservative legislators, support them. Who was it that said the primaries are going to be where the real election is now?
Yeah, the primaries are the general election now, essentially, in Arkansas, because everybody runs a Republican. Speaking of Republicans, I want to ask you, we're going to take a break. I want to come back with State Representative Dan Sullivan. I want to ask a little bit about the Republican brand, where it stands today in the state of Arkansas. We're with State Representative Dan Sullivan. He has announced he is seeking re-election for his seat, District 53. We'll be back in just a moment, folks.
The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Arkansas small businesses are tired of taxes that are too high and regulations that work as obstacles to small business success. If you own a small business, it's time to take action. Now, I'm not talking about the local chambers of commerce. I'm talking about an organization that's actually run by small business owners and are fighting for small businesses right here in the state of Arkansas. They're called Conduit for Action, and they're on your side. Conduit for Action is here not to get something from the government, but to be left alone by the government. Think of them as your personal advocate for limited government at the Capitol in Little Rock. If you're tired of all the politicians talking with no results and ready for action, start outsourcing your government affair needs with Conduit for Action. Go now to conduitforaction.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforaction.org, and stand up for small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works Obamacare private option, has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We're joined by Dan Sullivan. He has announced that he is running for re-election for his district, House District 53. State Representative Sullivan, thanks again for being with us.
Yeah, glad to. And by the way, I'll be renewing my all my ads on this station. I get a lot of people that tell them they hear my ads on the Paul Harrell radio show.
Hey, well,
and it's a good thing.
Well, we are an equal opportunity capitalists.
There
here.
you go.
So, but yeah, absolutely. And the content, I will say, the quotes and stuff, the content of your ad is really, I really enjoy them. Listening to them, and everything
they're
else.
about core values.
Yeah,
and they're
principles.
About liberty, and they're about freedom, and they're about our nation, and that's where we are where we need to get back to.
Yeah. All right, I mentioned I wanted to talk in the second part of the interview just about the Republican brand right now and where it stands. So policy-wise, we talked about this when you came on and did your impression of the session, but policy-wise, I mean, we're looking at revenue increases left and right, attempted revenue increases, some successful, some not. we're spending too much money over and over and over, and so a lot of this is on the governor and everything else. It's also on the legislature that I think maybe is a little bit more loyal to the Republican R in front of his name and the power. I don't think you're one of those guys, clearly, because
Thank you.
If you look at, if you would just look at, look where you came in the the CFC scorecard and everything else. But let's talk about Jake Files for a second. Here's a guy.
Well, let me talk about the brand just for a second.
Okay, all right.
Just,
well, this ties in with the brand.
Okay, we'll come back. But just in perspective, when there were, 10 Republicans in the House, our brand was pretty tight.
Yeah.
As we have, 74, 75, your brand is diffused a little bit.
More opportunity for people to mess
so
up.
That's just part of natural. And we all know that we have people that were Democrats that just changed parties just to be a part of the Republican Party so they could get elected. That's clear. So, what our brand is, we just need, again, it's all about the primary elections. We need voters to turn out and elect conservative Republicans.
Yeah, whoever they may be.
Whoever they may be.
Okay, well, so on that, though, we have the party of moral clarity, supposedly, where we have Jake Files, who, since February, article after article, just not looking good. Now we have him mentioned in the sworn FBI affidavit under penalty of perjury by this FBI agent. Forging bids, pocketing $26,000. We've got bank numbers, we've got check numbers, we've got exact amounts matching up, all of this stuff, and yet he doesn't resign. I do believe that he will resign. The politics of this are such that they don't want to have a special election and guarantee your colleague, State Representative Matt Pitch, gets to walk into the Senate. Now, I think that's wrong because I think the people of Fort Smith who are listening to us on KFPW, the Marshall right now, they're going to be denied representation in a fiscal session if this happens. And so, you go back and you look when Paul Bookout resigned, he did it just on the hint of not even the FBI, but an ethics investigation and a special prosecutor. And I just think this is really bad for the brand. I've called on him to resign. Mark Johnson yesterday from Pulaski County Republicans, he wasn't speaking on behalf of them, but he's the chair. He called for him to resign. Just what are your thoughts? And does this hurt the supposed moral superior Republican Party? Does it hurt the brand?
Yeah, I don't know how morally superior we are when you look down throughout the history and what's going on. I don't know we can necessarily claim that, but we hope to. Events like this certainly don't help that. But I think it's incumbent on anyone in political office, if they're guilty, they resign. Not just of minor things, but when you have some major infractions go on, and if you're guilty, that's your obligation. It's the obligation of his constituents, or my constituents, if I were in that position, for them to reach out to their representative, be it senator or on the House, and let the local voter know how they feel about the person that represents them.
Yeah.
As you know, I was under a lot of scrutiny these last few months, under some degree of pressure, and I know how the media can spin things. I know how there's information that's not out there.
Like 30 seconds.
That nobody goes to. But again, I think if you're guilty, you resign. Otherwise, until you're proven guilty, you're innocent.
Yeah, well, I certainly can appreciate that, and I like what you said about how it's up to the people of the district, because it certainly is. We do have the local paper in Fort Smith now calling for Jake Files' resignation as well. But to me, it's a mess. I think it hurts the Republican brand. State Representative Dan Sullivan, though, we're out of time. I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Paul. Enjoy being here.
All right, folks, we are going to be right back with State Representative Mark Lowry. Don't go anywhere.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Discuss this important issue. I have with me the chairman of the Pulaski County Republicans, Mark Johnson. He's also the chairman of the Association of Republican Chairmen. Did I say that right, Mark? Mark, are you with us? Do we not have Mark with us? Mark, can you hear me?
Paul, I'm here.
Ah, there you
I'm
are.
Here.
No, okay. So,
Thank you.
So you're the chairman of the Republican County Chairmen, right?
Well, they call it the president of the Arkansas Republican County Chairs Association.
Okay, well, yeah.
And Paul, let me make clear and do my quick little disclaimer. We haven't met and discussed this, and so I am speaking for Mark Johnson only. And I think I've talked to some of my colleagues, other county chairs, and they share my concerns. But, as officially the organization hasn't, we haven't met since the end of July, so certainly we haven't discussed this. But
I understand, but you go ahead. But the same thing goes for the Pulaski County Republicans. You're just speaking for Mark Johnson, right?
That's true. But I can tell you that a lot of my friends that are members of our county committee, as well as people who are other county chairs around the state, share a lot of my feelings on this. But there's no official position. And let me say this in all fairness: the only person that speaks for the Republican Party is Chairman Webb, and his statement, although I think it was a little too neutral from my way of thinking, was correct in that he pointed out some facts. Of course, Senator Files is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. On the other hand,
have you read that indictment?
We have to.
Good grief! Have you read the indictment?
Well, I've read this thing, and that's why I feel the way I do.
I'm sorry, the affidavit. The affidavit, not the indictment. My apologies. Go ahead.
I did read it, and let's clarify. There has not yet been an indictment. However, sometimes when someone is under investigation, there's a locked closet over at the FBI office, and all this evidence is being piled up to take to a grand jury, which is of course secret. But in this particular case, we're dealing with things that are absolutely in the public record. What could seriously be considered to be misappropriation of general improvement funds, some shady operations in the procurement process on this ball field, in Sebastian County, and it's more than just a little bit of smoke. There's a pretty good simmering fire that the public can look at, and it's very troubling to me. And actually, Paul, this is not just about this situation with Senator Files. We had the issue earlier in the year with former Representative Micah Neal and Senator John Woods, and it's the same kind of thing. It's an abuse of power and abuse of authority, and the kind of thing that we many of us are Republicans because we didn't want to do this. We watched the Democrats do this for many, many years, and it's imperative that as Republican leaders, we demand that our people do better. And if they don't do better, they need to step out of there. I, for one, didn't go through what I have as a Republican for over 37 years to have some young thieves tarnish the brand that was built by Governor Winthrop Rockefeller, his son, Win Paul Rockefeller, John Paul Hammersmith, Ed Bethune, and other leaders of integrity that I think stand against.
We have forgotten to put the right bumper music in. Excuse me, we got a breaking news. Welcome back, folks. It's the Paul Harrell program. I'm going to get that fixed here in just a minute. Hey, I want to welcome back to the program. We have State Representative Mark Lowry is with us. He represents the good people of District 39. Mark, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Doing well, sir. Go ahead and tell our audience real quick, District 39, about where that is.
District 39 primarily is made up of the Maumelle area, but it also takes in some of rural northwest Pulaski County, Marche, Oak Grove, and then also the Amboy community in North Little Rock. That's just right outside Camp Robinson.
Okay. So I wanted to have you on to talk about this headline that I saw last week. It was August 24th. Headline was Hiring Arkansas Lawmaker's Wife for State Job Clears Panel. And in it, and this is interesting because we were just talking about how a lot of times former legislators end up with government jobs or things like that. But we really didn't cover the spouse aspect of this. But State Representative Democrat Reginald Murdoch, his wife, Willie Murdoch, has basically been given an $85,000 job. And you're on the Arkansas Legislative Council, correct?
I'm an alternate, but last term I served as vice chair of Legislative Council.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I'm concerned about it. I was listening to the end of your last segment with Representative Sullivan, where you were talking about the Republican brand. And I just have to say, I think the Republican brand is damaged in Arkansas by the fact that we're not doing any better than previous administrations in terms of curbing what many Arkansans would look at and see as cronyism. And I think that, this is one of those cases where we needed to have more scrutiny over the hiring of Miss Murdoch, and we did not. And I made a motion last week to re-refer the hiring back to the Personnel Subcommittee. I had been told and confirmed that there were some issues regarding her past employment as a school superintendent that were not known when she was vetted by Higher Ed and also by the Personnel Subcommittee. And I thought it bore taking another look at.
Yeah.
But I was outvoted 30-9 on that motion.
30-9. So Willie Murdoch hired as the director of the Career Pathways program. You say she's a former superintendent. Now, is that because you Google her name really quick, and you find Arkansas Times stories from June 8, 2016. Audit finds $23,000 overpayment on insurance for Lee County. It mentions Willie Murdoch there. Then we have Lee County School District talks about state control nearly 1 year. What does state control mean in this context?
Well, that school district was under state control for being in academic distress and, I believe, fiscal distress. And she was the superintendent answering to Johnny Key as her school board member, or as the school board. And they were released from state takeover, and I don't know the exact time frame. Seems like it was 2016. But then almost immediately, earlier in the spring, and maybe one of the headlines that you might have come across, the school district under her control, under her supervision, was in danger of losing accreditation because of hiring decisions that she made. And the school board decided at that time that they wanted her to resign. They wanted to terminate her contract. That was around February of this year. Some other school board members that disagreed with that action filed a legal injunction to allow her to finish out her contract, which ended in June, and then the school board did not renew her contract. Now, those are, if we're going to give someone credit in looking at their application, and one thing we should point out, there were 105 applicants for this position.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if all of them were Arkansans, but assuming they are, there are 104 Arkansas residents who probably were not treated fairly in the vetting and hiring process. But her contract ended in June. If you're going to look at someone's years of experience, and I think in her case it's maybe 30 years in the school business, you've got to look at the good and the bad. And what I've heard is that the bad was not reviewed before the decision was made to give her the job.
And that's why I'm glad you're coming on. I want to get this out there because we briefly covered this on Friday. We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowry. Now, Mark, I know because I've talked to you several times, just in passing, down at what I call the Marble Palace, and I know, education is something that's very important to you. Matter of fact, you're on the Education Committee, correct? Or are you the chair of the Education Committee?
No, I'm not. I'm not chair, but
okay.
I am on that committee for my third term.
Okay, yeah. So this is you know a lot of what goes on behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I have the story pulled up here. This is just from Lee County, Arkansas. An Arkansas school district has been placed on probation after it failed to meet staffing and course requirements. Times Herald reported the Arkansas Board of Education voted to put the Lee County School District on probation Thursday after it failed to hire enough counselors for the student body. In addition, the district has reportedly failed to provide the 38 required courses. This is a story from April from News Channel 3, April of this year, and you're telling me that we essentially have given the superintendent a promotion.
Well, she is making, from my understanding, she is making less than what she did at Lee County, but there's not a sterling record that is following her. And the audit and also this issue of probation was something that the selection committee at higher ed did not review. They did not look at this. The other thing that very much concerns me is the semantical wordplay that is being used between the governor's office and higher ed. Governor's office says, well, we didn't recommend her. We asked that she be considered. But as you can imagine, higher ed heard that, and their perception was that she was being recommended for that job. And I just think we shouldn't be getting caught up in these semantical games that make it look like we're not doing our due diligence in making sure that we do the right thing. And that's really what this is about, is doing the right thing.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I mean, I really am. That is refreshing. So, do we know why they don't look at the negatives? Is that standard procedure when we're talking about hiring somebody? They just don't ever look at the negatives that that kind of should follow them into the interview process.
Well, one of the things that I was, and you have to understand, I'm probably going to upset a lot of my colleagues who think, well, you got outvoted 30-9, you need to let this go. But this was brought to my attention, several weeks ago by a fellow member of legislative audit or someone who served on audit. We sit on legislative audit, we get these audit reports, and one of the things that is very frustrating is we keep seeing school districts getting bad audits. The superintendent maybe their contract doesn't get renewed because of it, and they're able to go right down the road to another school district, and there's not anything flagged on their credentials or on their resume or anything. And they're able to just take right up business as usual. And that's the case here. I mean, there are, allegations back and forth. Well, was it the school board's fault that she got overpaid, or was it the superintendent? Was it her fault? Whatever. The truth is they wanted to resolve it. The school board wanted to what happened is that she was overpaid in health insurance premiums.
Yeah.
We have state law that says that all school district employees have to be paid the same amount in health insurance contributions. The school board had structured her contract in such a way that she was wanting to forego a travel allowance and a housing allowance because she lived like 2 minutes from the school offices. And in lieu of that, they went ahead and gave her more in health insurance premiums. And that's a violation of state law. Once it was found by the audit, it needed to be corrected.
Yeah.
My understanding, one of the ways that it was corrected is that from that point forward, she paid all of her health insurance premiums. So, there's fault to be laid on both sides. But my frustration is that the personnel subcommittee, some of the members say to me, well, it's not our job to vet these individuals. Our job is just to review.
Well,
and frankly, if it wasn't,
now, come on, this makes me. I mean, I'm reading this here, and I'm hearing what you're saying about our job's not to vet. That's preposterous to me. It's just to review. So why even do it? I mean, if it sounds to me like it's just a rubber stamp. I mean, you're reading here. This is from Max Brantley, of all people, but Max Brantley, Arkansas Times. The excess payment she got, $23,331, almost $800 a month for health insurance, just like you said, Mark. Were for Superintendent Willie Murdoch, and now we've hired this person, for this position. This all just, I mean, I don't understand why we give these public officials or these taxpayer-funded employees such a benefit of the doubt. It's so frustrating as a citizen and a taxpayer.
Well, and the point was made to me that, we would not, the personnel subcommittee of ALC, the Legislative Council, would not have even been reviewing this specific personnel appointment if it had not been the spouse of a legislator.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a reason we have that state law there for the review, and it's not meant to be a rubber stamp. It's meant to be a review and to make sure that all of the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted, and they were not.
Mm-hmm. And this really does kind of connect with a story we covered. This is unrelated to the current topic, but it sort of is, because Governor Hutchinson wanted the DHS contract to be, and I believe it was something like $42 million more than the current bidder for whatever the service was. And the governor's going ahead and doing it anyway because he has the legal authority to do that. And I'm just thinking, well, why this whole idea of oversight and getting the rubber stamp? I mean, if you can't actually stop it from happening, then what are we doing? I mean, so I guess the question would be, could you guys have actually stopped this from happening if the votes had turned out in your favor?
We could have sent it back to the personnel subcommittee. Several members of that committee, maybe most of them, were not aware of the bad audit. They were not aware of the probation of her previous employer, the school district, when they went ahead and decided to approve, as reviewed, her hiring. Now, and here's the other issue, is that she was paid on this state job, I believe, $8,000 above the recommended base. So not only did we give her a state job, we went ahead and paid her as exceptionally well qualified. And I don't think that her previous employment shows that she's exceptionally well qualified.
We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowry from State Representative out of District 39. Now, you mentioned, you kind of built on what you heard State Representative Sullivan, who was on the program earlier, when I did ask him about the brand of the Republican Party. And I'm glad that you think that this is negative towards it, because I do as well. I think there's a lot of stuff that is. What's the solution here? And because I think there's a disconnect between what the people of Arkansas have been voting for now for several election cycles. It's not just, in my opinion, it's not just switching from a Democrat to a Republican. I believe people are voting for reform. And I don't think some people in the leadership understand the level of reform that the people of Arkansas want. What are your thoughts on the brand and reform?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think that the people of Arkansas made a conscious decision when they voted in supermajorities of Republicans in both the House and the Senate, and a Republican governor, that we were going to do different, that we were no longer going to be pushing through sole source contracts without bidding, that we were no longer going to be ignoring best practices when it comes to procurement and deciding contracts, and that we're no longer going to participate in what many people believe is cronyism. Where, you know, and let me just say this: I know that there are some exceptional spouses of legislators. It should not preclude them from being considered for these jobs. However, because it doesn't pass the smell test for a lot of our candidates, we need to make sure that complete scrutiny and confidence in the process is upheld. And I just don't think it was in this particular case. So I'm very disappointed that we don't seem to be doing anything different in terms of reform and of making sure that we have good government.
Yeah, well, I certainly I would agree with that statement, and I think we got to do more. And real quick, last question, unrelated, but do you want to comment on the news about Senator Jake Files and the FBI on the affidavit and him still remaining in office? What are your thoughts on
that? Well, I think I'm very concerned about so much of the fallout that's been out there. You know, one of the things, when I first got elected, I was not that crazy about the idea of GIF grants. It smelled to me like, you know, pork barrel politics. But I have to say, I've been able to help some very small, needy organizations, you know, food pantries and neighborhood associations with that money. And, of course, now GIF has been stopped because there have been these incidences of abuse. And I think, you know, it does damage the credibility of the Republican Party that we have these kind of incidents happening by Republican legislators. And I think it's disconcerting that Senator Files is, you know, still holding his chairmanship of Revenue and Tax Committee and sounding in about tax reform, and yet we've got these questions that seem to not look good, and so I wish that he would voluntarily step down. I don't favor any kind of forcing him out, because certainly everyone is innocent or they're guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. He has that right of due
Freudian
process.
slip there. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, there's so many of us that are guilty before we're proven innocent on accusations of, whatever. But this is the case where he does get due process rights. But I think it does hamper his ability to represent his constituents.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor, appreciate your honesty, State Representative Mark Lowry, and just let me know, and you want to come on and talk about this again. I really would like to follow this, and if we have some ideas moving forward about what we can do to actually put some teeth into the power that you guys have as a legislature to try to stop some of this stuff, but it's going to require people going out there and kind of being willing to take the hits, because you're changing the way things go in Little Rock, and the bureaucracies don't really want to change, and that's going to take you guys really being willing to take the heat. And I'll let you have the last word.
Well, you're absolutely right. It takes more than just a term or two to turn things around. That's I used to be a big advocate of term limits, and I have to say, if it weren't for term limits, I would not have been able to have been in the legislature. But it takes us a while to be able to overcome the power of the bureaucracy that is in the executive branch and included in these agencies. And, I think we're seeing some really good changes at the top, but there still are mid-level management decisions are being made over and above the wishes of the duly elected legislators.
Mm. State Representative Mark Lowry, we appreciate it, sir. Be safe, okay?
All right, thank you.
All righty. Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. The Liberty Machine rolls on next.
The Paul Harrell program.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon, so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, welcome back as we wrap up hour number one. We got second hour coming your way next. I can't believe some of this stuff online. I'm sorry, folks. People on the right are so correct so often about predicting what the left is going to do next. I mean, look at this right here. There's now a petition that's calling for calling FDR a racist, and they're now trying to rename. And that may be, but they're now trying to rename Roosevelt Island in New York City because it's named after, I guess what? At this point, is it just if you're a white president? So the only statues that we're going to be able to have are of Barack Obama? Is that what's going to happen? We now even have the sanitizing of history is going so far, ladies and gentlemen, that we now have liberal outlets like Salon.com calling the national anthem neo-Confederate. Now, that's weird because the national anthem was nothing to do with the Civil War. The national anthem was Francis Scott Key. He was talking about the War of 1812 and you know, but our flag was still there. You know, you guys understand. You guys know the story. This is from Breitbart. Warner Todd Houston, leftist online site Salon, went on the attack against the playing of America's national anthem at sporting events, calling the tune an example of neo-Confederate ideology. You know, football starting, college football starting this weekend. We got an NFL coming up, and we got people who, the whole not standing during the national anthem, not putting your hand on your heart or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is all back. I guess the NFL wants terrible ratings yet again. The writer of the piece over at Salon's name is Jefferson Morley, and they began by studying the history of Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, the Supreme Court justice infamous for the Dred Scott decision. Taney's 1857 ruling said that slaves were legal property and could not be U.S. citizens. Taney was in the news recently when his statue was removed from Maryland's State House grounds. From there, Morley proceeded into the history of the author of the Star-Spangled Banner, Francis Scott Key. He characterizes the words as containing a neo-Confederate ideology, despite the fact that the song was written during the War of 1812, nearly half a century before the founding of the Confederacy. Morley goes on to list that Key's lyrics, with its lyrics deriding black people, became a point of pride for Southerners after the Civil War. Specifically, the writer cited an attack on the anthem published last year by The Intercept, which claimed that the words hireling and slave in the song's original but little-sung third verse represented a celebration of slavery. So now, the national anthem... See, they won't stop. That's why separating the days Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King made no sense. That's why they're going to come for the Confederate star on the Arkansas flag. That's why they're going to come after the Confederate monuments down at the Marble Palace. You're never going to appease these people until the Constitution is burnt.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Against this type of thing, and
Absolutely.
in the words of Chairman Webb that he said in a speech that I heard not too long ago, he said, as the majority party, we have to work hard and be careful not to become what we've replaced. And that's what I'm fighting against now. I don't want us to become what we've replaced.
I appreciate we're talking with Mark Johnson. I so appreciate you saying this, and because you're exactly right. So let me just get you on record. I mean, do you believe that Jake Files should resign?
Yeah, I absolutely believe he should resign, and not necessarily just because of the situation, but because this is clearly not going to go away. You don't have to, be an attorney to see the kind of problems he has. He can't do his job properly and deal with this. And what could happen is by not if he doesn't resign soon to allow Governor Hutchinson to call a special election, it's quite likely that there couldn't be a special election before the fiscal session, and that the citizens of that district wouldn't be represented when the legislature meets in I guess it's early February. So when something like this happens, and I think the local paper, the Southwest Times Record, which you alluded to a moment ago, in their editorial, I think they pointed out how this just needs to be stopped. And if he is indeed innocent, he can spend his time proving that. And certainly I would give him, as Chairman Webb said in his statement, he is innocent until proven guilty. But on the other hand, he doesn't have the right to drag down the constituents of his district and all that. Paul, this whole general improvement fund thing has just been a holy mess. I mean, we, this started, and just to kind of help your listeners kind of get a perspective on this, the general improvement fund is state surplus that's divvied out for different types of projects. And years ago, it was something that the governor worked on. Well, when Mike Huckabee became governor, the Democrats in the legislature, primarily Senator Nick Wilson, Pocahontas, didn't want to see that happen. So they came up with some new ways to divide that money up that kept the governor from having the kind of control that the executive branch had in the past. And the thing has evolved through the years where it's become kind of a legislative slush fund. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there aren't many wonderful needs of government that have been funded by that. I mean, there are fire trucks for our volunteer fire departments and senior citizen centers and things that are, properly done and done by the book, and people can be proud of that. But the system itself, unfortunately, lent itself to some corruption, and this is the ultimate example of it. The example in Washington County, the first example, and this kind of thing that we apparently see in Sebastian County is another example of what happens when you have this type of just corruption. It is what it is.
We're talking with Mark Johnson. He is the president of the Republican County Chairman Association, also Pulaski County Chairman of the Pulaski County Republicans. But he is not speaking for those organizations here. He's just coming on, giving his personal opinion. He's called for Jake Files' resignation. So just talk to me about this, Mark, because like you said, you've been doing this for 37 years. This is not what you wanted. Republicanism in Arkansas has always tried to stand for clean government compared to the Democrats. And yet here we are where they're not calling for his resignation, or at best they're stalling so that they don't have to do a special election, which I believe is a form of soft tyranny. They're trying to make sure that their chosen person gets to kind of step in. We have the leadership of the Republican Party down at the Marble Palace, who are not saying anything. The governor is not saying anything. And the media is not saying anything that much. I mean, you have the Times Record. Kudos to them. But I mean, if you Google Jake Files' name, you really won't find too many articles past the middle of last week where this is a huge thing. And you would think, especially since he's a Republican, and especially since the Republican Party is supposed to be different than the Democrats, everybody would be piling on, and yet there's a lot of silence out there. Address some of that and the leadership's failing us right now.
Well, I'm loath to criticize other Republicans because of the intensity or lack thereof of their attack on this, and there's a propensity, Paul, for all of us to let the judicial process play out. But the difference in this case is that, as I said a moment ago, if we allow this to play out a little longer, then you're going to have it's District 8, I believe.
Yes,
you told me that the citizens of Senate District 8 wouldn't have a senator, and we've seen these things happen before where especially in federal cases where the U.S. attorney steps in and says, here's your choices. You can go to jail for, let's see here, under the sentencing guidelines, 30 years or so, or you can go ahead and plead guilty to this, this, and this, and you might only spend 10 years. And that's the way these things work, and we know that.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. It is hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. Welcome back to the program. We have the chairman of the Faulkner County Tea Party as well as a member of the Arkansas Tea Party Alliance. Mr. David Crow is back with us. David, welcome.
Hey, Paul, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
It's been a good show so far today.
Well, good. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Yeah. Did you listen to State Representative Lowry on earlier?
I did. I read that article in the paper, and I sure am glad you had him on. He is on target, man. I am telling you, cronyism is alive and well in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah,
and the Republican brand is really being hurt.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it really is. Real quick, let's remind everybody. I mean, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. We're talking about the 3rd annual Tea Party Convention, Arkansas Tea Party Alliance Convention. Liberty, does it matter? September the 16th, that's a Saturday, starting at 8 a.m., going till 4 p.m. at the Robertson Center, the new ballroom that overlooks the Arkansas River and the Doubletree Hotel by Hilton. Now, I actually haven't been in the new Robertson Center, but gosh, my time in Little Rock, I certainly saw the construction just kind of go very, very slowly, and here we go. Now it's ready to go. Now, have you been in the new Robertson Center?
I snuck in and looked around, and I'm telling you what, that place is looking good. And I've had some friends that has gone to some events there, and they just said it's just outstanding. It has a little less seating, I believe. But the seating is just and the sound in it is just wonderful.
Good.
And I have not gone there, nor have I performed there. But it is a site that I think a lot of people would enjoy. Now there's a connection between the Robinson and the Doubletree, and in that connection where you walk through the brand new corridor that goes down through there is where the ballroom is, overlooking the river.
Wow.
And that ballroom is very nice, and it's well put together, and it will be a good feature for not only us, but also many other groups that chooses to use that in the future.
So if you want to get tickets to this, folks, and I highly recommend that you do, we've got it up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. And it's pinned at the top of the page where you can buy the tickets online. And this is what I wrote earlier, because I've actually put a post out just encouraging people to come. If you are interested in limiting government in Arkansas, then you need to seriously consider coming to the Arkansas Tea Party Alliance 3rd Annual Convention. You don't have to be a member of the Tea Party to come. The information and connections you will make are the best resources in the state. You will not regret it. And then it says get tickets here, and you can get tickets here. Now, David, some people have been commenting on this Facebook post, and we have Glenn on Facebook writing and asking, will tickets be available at the door? What's the answer to that question?
The answer is absolutely. We've had a number of people that have shown up over the years, have come to, we had a kickoff event a few years ago where we were actually introducing the Alliance and the last two conventions, and I think we've had close to 40 people show up on the days of and purchase their tickets. We would prefer that people pre-purchase,
yes,
because that allows us the opportunity to plan for the breakfast and all the drinks and the lunches and the like. But we've over-purchased a little bit to help out in that regard. But yes, you can get your tickets at the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know certainly that you guys would prefer them, go online to the Eventbrite page and get them there, just like you said. But it is good to know that maybe you don't know, maybe you're not going to know till the day before, and you say, well, okay, I'm just want to walk up and get my tickets there. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah, and so David, let's go back real quick. Let's go back. The Republican brand, right? And so, I mentioned obviously the contracts. I mentioned the employment of state representative's wife. Over at Conduit for Action, they had a great piece on lawmakers in the revolving door. They leave office and they get a government job. Then we could talk about the policies that Republicans in leadership are pursuing: bigger government, bigger taxes, more and more spending. And then they'll make excuses for all of that stuff. Well, you want change too fast. Well, you don't understand. We really need the money, or we'll lower your taxes. It'll be revenue neutral or whatever. But now we have the Jake Files situation, and I just want to get your comments on this, because, now we're really talking. We've got what I would consider an ethical crisis, a moral crisis. The Republicans are not supposed to be this party. And what's really weird to me, David, is that the media is really silent on this big hypocrisy. And I now know more than ever that the media is now protecting the Republican leadership. They're now protecting them. And I think I'll even get conspiratorial. I think it's because they know that they're really implementing progressive Democrat policies in a lot of ways. What are your thoughts on Jake Files and the Republican brand?
Well, let me mention about the media, but I'll get to Jake Files. Whenever you have Brummett, who is a devout liberal, being supportive of the Republican leadership and the policies that they're pushing in the state of Arkansas, you know that there is a serious problem if you're a conservative and you want smaller government, less spending, and less taxes. You are in trouble because the leadership is pushing progressive policy and practices to the max. And we can go on about spending and how it's increased $400 million under the governor, and how we actually spend $8,000 per capita in the state, and the taxes are some of the highest around the country, number 17 on the charts of the 50 states, and we tax and spend with the best of them, and it's regretful. But the Jake Files situation, that is so regretful. It is for what now, 2 or 3 years this has been in the news, or at least the last year and a half or so, and it is quite evident with all that has been broken in the press that actually some of the state papers have called for his resignation.
Yeah, one has. Yes,
one has. Okay, and
that I know, but there may be more. There may be two. I've only seen the Times record, so I could be wrong.
Yeah. For some reason, I was thinking that the dim gas came out as well, but I'm not. I don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But so everybody that heard me say that, you can erase that. But I've been down to the Capitol a number of times at the task force for the tax reform, and Jake Files shows up back in the back, and I'm just frustrated with it. He shows up, he stands in the back of the room. I'm sure he gets a stipend for coming in and just visiting, like all of them do. But it's just knowing that he's there, that he has abused the GIF program, that he has actually used it to his own personal gain, and he's pocketed $27,000. They have it on. The data is there, the information is there. The affidavits reveal what I just said. And the man needs to step aside and allow the people of the Fort Smith area to have representation in the legislature, or at least representation that has the respect of the people. And I can't imagine that Jake Files has that with the majority of the people up in Fort Smith.
Well, I agree with your comments certainly on this, and it does really, I feel like, hurt the brand. I don't expect David, and I'm over the weekend, kind of thought about this. I don't expect the right outcome here at all. I really don't. I want the powers to be to know that we know and the people know and that we're really upset about it. But it's really worse than politics as usual, because you still have some people that believe that whether they're Republicans and so they're doing a good job, and because they're not listening to shows like this one, they're not getting the information, they're not going to Conduit for Action and things like that, and so that's what's so frustrating about this whole situation. The brand is hurting. More people are figuring it out, but I mean, what we have now here is the governor and the powers that be. I mean, I do believe he will resign, but he won't resign in time for special election, and that is only to try to engineer things to where the people who want that seat are going to get it. And I think that is so wrong. And I just thought Republicans, at least they're supposed to be different than the Democrats.
Right. And if history repeats itself that we've seen over the last few years, you just see this the gamesmanship that has been played in the corner office down there.
Yep.
To try and manipulate things to his moderate position on so many matters. And yeah, granted, he's a part of this engineering that you discussed, and there's no doubt in my mind that they are attempting to delay, and then it would put their selection in good posture for being elected to that position of senator from the Fort Smith area. And you're right. He should go ahead and step aside so they can have a fair and honest special election for this for this position. But time will tell.
Yeah, time is going to tell. So let's get back real quick. Arkansas Tea Party, liberty doesn't matter. I think. I mean, these are the big ticket issues. These are the issues that are being ignored. There's a bunch of folks down in Little Rock, David, that don't understand that. Let's take our economic liberty, for example, that it's a prerequisite for a lot of other freedoms, for every freedom, really. And the bigger that government gets, the more they're not going to be able to pay their bills, as we've seen, and the more they're going to come for more of our money, thereby constricting our economic freedom because, we're going to have less of our money. I mean, that's a huge deal. And so, that's one of the reasons that liberty matters. I mean, it's not just, as much as I love the Second Amendment, it's not just about the Second Amendment. I mean, we've got some real issues, and the Arkansas Tea Party Alliance, I know it's full of enthusiastic people that are ready to really have a stellar convention.
Oh, yes. There's no doubt. And Paul, you're going to be there, too, and
Yep.
You're going to be one of our MCs overseeing stuff, and it's going to be exciting to have you, but also many of the other groups that are going to be there, and we're going to be talking liberty. We're going to be talking about these issues that you just expressed. We're going to be talking about smaller government, less taxes, less spending, and returning freedom, returning liberty back to the people. And I would love to have a 10% cut in my taxes. I'm sure every citizen of the state of Arkansas would like to have that, and we would love to see less government controlling our lives in the state of Arkansas, and that's what we're about. We're trying to advance that agenda, and we've had some successes over the years. We want to continue to push that, and we've got a great lineup of people that are going to be in groups that are going to be there sharing what they believe is liberty and why it does matter and why we need to express and push for that in the state of Arkansas. And it's going to be a good time.
All right, Mr.
On September the 16th, folks, come on out.
Mr. David Crow, we appreciate it, sir. Thanks for coming on, as always. Oh, all right. Well, yep, sorry. We lost him a little early there. All right, so we're going to take a break. The phone number to call us. Text us 870-275-9799. Call or text 870-275-9799. We'll be back. We got a lot more show left. Don't go anywhere. Arkansas small businesses are tired of taxes that are too high and regulations that work as obstacles to small business success. If you own a small business, it's time to take action. Now, I'm not talking about the local chambers of commerce. I'm talking about an organization that's actually run by small business owners and are fighting for small businesses right here in the state of Arkansas. They're called Conduit for Action, and they're on your side. Conduit for Action is here not to get something from the government, but to be left alone by the government. Think of them as your personal advocate for limited government at the Capitol in Little Rock. If you're tired of all the politicians talking with no results and ready for action, start outsourcing your government affair needs with Conduit for Action. Go now to conduitforaction.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforaction.org, and stand up for small business in Arkansas. Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. You're listening to the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, the Paul Harrell Program.
All right, we're going to do it. This situation in Houston is unbelievable. It really is. 52 inches and counting. Can you imagine? We were talking about economic freedom a second ago. Folks, the economic consequences of this, we still don't know what those are going to be. quite frankly. We have people's entire, existence, world just turned completely upside down. And I would encourage everybody in the audience to just pray for our countrymen who are in just a ton of, they need a lot of prayer. They need a lot of help too. And of course the media, they're doing their thing. We talked about this yesterday. Quick, look over there. They're putting a picture out there that's essentially, well, if it's another Katrina, fantastic, and if it's not, and people actually are helped, well, it's because there was less discrimination than there was during Katrina. That's the narrative that they're putting out there, where no one can win. Donald Trump can't win. But here's the thing. This is not about winning, and that's their whole problem, is they're just so paranoid that people that are going into the flood zone, into the hurricane with their boats, and you've got the Cajun Navy, you've got people that are actually trying to help other people, they're trying to rescue people, and it's like the most pro-American thing, you know what I'm saying, like that you can think of happening. It's like... it's like Independence Day without aliens. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that kind of, we're going to do the right thing. And that's the story here. But you're not going to really hear that. Instead, and this is what's interesting, the Daily Caller has a piece, and I can't play the video for you because it's laden with expletives. CNN's talking to this woman. She's talking to this black woman and her kids. She was without food and water for 5 days. They were waving white flags. They couldn't get anybody to come help them. And now they're saved. They're rescued. And the headline here is a rescued woman goes off on CNN because she's upset that these reporters are all here with their families. These reporters are all here with their cameras shoving their microphones in their faces when these people have just gone through something so traumatic. I mean, the woman said that you're seeing all these people at their worst, and all you guys are doing, and she's very upset, is standing there with your cameras, and you're still putting the microphone. So as she started, this is what's crazy. You got to go watch this video, but there's language. But you got to go watch this video, because as she goes off and as she starts to kind of, say some expletives about how you got the cameras, the CNN reporter still sticks the microphone in her face so that she can record what she's saying, which prompts the woman to go, and you're still, after I said that, you're still sticking the microphone in my face. Well, so the reporter kind of pulls the microphone back, but she can't resist. She just instinctively, it's just like breathing, it's involuntary. She just can't help but put the microphone right back in her face. And the woman says again, you're still putting the microphone back in my face. And so you get it's just a picture here that the news media is far beyond they're not documenting anything at this point. That's not what the news media is doing. They're not documenting stuff. It's getting just gratuitous, really. A woman who was rescued from Hurricane Harvey, this is from the story, after 36 hours, went off on CNN for trying to interview her on camera while she was with her children. The mother began the interview by explaining how long she had to wait to be rescued, but was becoming visibly upset and anxious by having to share her story to the CNN correspondent. The CNN correspondent continued to ask questions and touched the mother's arm as she and her daughter were crying. We walked through 4 feet of water to get food on the first day, clearly annoyed with the CNN reporter. Anyway. Hey, when we come back, we're going to do a twit of the day. And this one really deserves it. Back in a minute.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
And that's why I think a lot of people anticipate, people I've discussed it with recently, and several of them were attorneys, that's probably the kind of thing we're going to see in a case like this. The information that was in the affidavit seeking the search warrant that you just referred to a minute ago it was powerful. It was very specific, and again, this isn't like something that could only exist in someone's lockbox in the basement of their office building. These are public records from the city of Fort Smith, the Western Arkansas Planning and Development District, the state of Arkansas. These are things that anyone can go look up and read them, and they create a trail of breadcrumbs that unfortunately is a very sad thing, but it shows some corruption. I mean, the young lady that worked, I believe her name was Ms. Gonzalez, that worked for Senator Biles, is involved. She was supposedly to be one of the subcontractors, and it appears there's violation of procurement process on this. And this is probably what led to the city canceling the contract. On this ball field. But it's, Paul, when public officials get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, it's a sad thing, not just for that public official. It's for all of us citizens. It's a failure of our system, because these are truly positions of public trust. And when someone is abusing it, let's talk about a couple other resignations. You had one up in your neck of the woods. Senator Paul Bookout resigned, 2-3 years ago?
Yes, sir.
And he was not accused of stealing taxpayers' money. He was only accused of misappropriating campaign funds that had been given to his campaign. And I'm not excusing Senator Bookout for that. I'm simply comparing that. That's, to me, stealing tax dollars is a lot higher bar and a lot more serious thing than the fact that he bought a big screen TV with some money that someone gave to his campaign fund.
Right. I agree with
we
that.
had the same thing happen with on our side of the aisle, Lieutenant Governor Mark Darr, who, just frankly just did some very sloppy things in the way he handled his money and his accounts in both campaign and his office. And, because there was an ethics complaint and it was proven to be correct, and there were those on both sides of the aisle. We Republicans, we're saying he needed to resign, and of course he did. But this is about real tax dollars and a conspiracy to misappropriate them and well, just Paul, we could talk about all day about should a sitting state senator be able to even go in and bid on doing this kind of work, even legitimately. There's places where you couldn't do that, but but this goes well beyond this. This is evidently corruption.
Yeah, the opportunity of corruption there, the temptation is great, and then you have, when it comes to him, the idea of him down there in the fiscal session. I mean, my speculation was last week, look, he's going to resign, but they're going to do it to where you don't have to have a special election, and that would mean that the city of Fort Smith and District 8, they're not going to have adequate representation, and I guess they're just willing to sacrifice that. Now, I mean, going back to this phrase, because I read your remarks where where you became the chairman.
Need to get something off your chest? Then call or text Paul now, 870-275-9799.
All right. Thanks for being with us, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. What are we doing? So we have, man, I can't believe that. I cannot believe that. I'm just looking at a headline just came across my desk that a judge has thrown out Sarah Palin's defamation lawsuit against the New York Times. I thought that was a pretty clear-cut case of defamation, but wow. What are you going to do? It's the justice system. It's supposed to get justice, right? Anyway, let's see. What else do we have here? I just look at this. Look at this. ABC journalist slammed as a snitch in the Houston situation for calling cops on the looters. So ABC journalists called the police for law and order, and now they're upset. We just covered the Houston situation where the woman exploded on a CNN reporter. Very upset. I don't know. It's just kind of felt Like these media folks are just there for the story. It's just more like voyeurs. Got price gouging going on, is what some people are calling it. $99 cases of $99 cases of bottled water, $10 a gallon gas. Hotels are tripling rates. Well, it's because they're in demand. Supply and demand. You've got the Pentagon is prepping 30,000 National Guard troops. You've got rain coming, more rain coming. Louisiana now is bracing for rain. Bridges and roads are failing. The water hasn't peaked yet. Still going to wait days until we have like the peak or the crest. Dams are under pressure. I read a story last night about them, Army Corps of Engineers. They're having to let a bunch of water out in thousands of homes. They knew just thousands of homes were going to be affected. And they have to do it. It's just like a triage situation. If we don't do it now, it'll be worse later. It's really it's a really tragic situation. Joe, have you heard anything about it?
Well,
obviously you've heard something about it, but
okay. So one of my favorite YouTubers is actually, he lives in Texas. He lives in Houston, so he's in all of this. And he did a vlog the other day about that. A lot of the people, there's like 2 or 3 dams in Texas, in this area, that are so full that they're worried about it breaking. So they're having to do controlled releases of water into residential areas to make sure no more, like, these dams don't bust and all of this water comes flooding into the city. So I've heard about, like, people, like, they're having to do this. Mm-hmm. It's a controlled group, but like, that's most of what I've heard about it.
Yeah, and it's just, like I said, it's only going to get worse. And so here's the situation. Have you heard of the Twitter charity, or I guess charity that is now no longer on Twitter? They call themselves Charitable Humans. Now, I know that sounds like a very general name, but you would imagine that these charitable humans would be charitable. And I put out a tweet earlier about we were looking for this, and so anyway, just go ahead and crank up the volume, Joe, and let's just go ahead and get into this.
Follow us on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. Now it's time for the twit of the day.
127th Upper Class Twit of the Year show.
Your mommy is a twit.
Thought by many to be this year's outstanding twit.
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
So it's now time for our twit of the day. This may be the most well-deserved twit of the day that we've ever bestowed on anybody, and we're just bestowing it on the now former Twitter handle Charitable Humans. That's right. This story you see in front of you, Charitable Humans have deleted their social media after refusing to help any red state. So it's not really a charitable organization. They're pick and choose. And look at the photo of those. Look at the photo of those family of friends just completely flooded out there. Lana Shadwick over at Breitbart. Charitable Humans, self-described on LinkedIn as a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's dedicated to changing the world for the betterment of all living beings on planet Earth. Gosh. Oh, man. I bet they were popular in college, don't you think? Dedicated to changing the world for the betterment of all living beings on the planet Earth. They've now deleted their social media account after stating it would not help any red state. Quote, let them clean up their own mess.
It's not their own mess. This is a natural disaster.
Yeah,
they didn't make this mess. They didn't create Hurricane Harvey.
But they did. I bet they did. It was their... No, it was their conservative ways of thinking. It, you know how they say a butterfly flaps its wings in Tokyo, and you get a... Yeah. That's what it was, but it was just, them being the conservatives that caused the hurricane to come there. Tweets have now been removed, or the now removed Twitter account. The Twitter account doesn't even exist. We're going to give you a shot of the screenshot here in a minute, though. They condemn the red state of Texas by saying, quote, any state that elects a Republican needs to be incinerated, there have to be severe consequences. So maybe that's why they don't want to help, Joe.
That sounds very uncharitable to me.
It's very borderline. Like, the opposite of this would be, this was God's judgment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like,
you know how
Texas is Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah. Well, you know, that's happened before, and I think it's unfortunate when even people in the, you know, in clergy or who are elevated in American society is, you know, kind of like, I've always just been like, man, you know, what are you doing? What are you doing saying that, you know, after the fact? That's not, because that is so, I mean, offensive really doesn't even begin to describe it. I just think it actually hurts the mission of the gospel, quite frankly, when people make those kinds of statements. But it's kind of like that, but on the left side of things. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So Breitbart, Texas, okay. Breitbart, Texas made a call to charitable humans. I can't get over the name. Charitable humans. There may not be a more ironic story in the entire news cycle. Breitbart reports that they made a call to this organization, Charitable Humans. The gentleman who answered denied knowing about the tweets and added, quote, Breitbart is the biggest misinformation machine on the planet, end quote. Boy. What'd you say, Joe?
I said what a lie. CNN is way worse.
Yeah, right. But if I were Breitbart, though, I'd frame that. That's hilarious. Let's see. A tweet from the 501c3 Twitter account also stated, quote, it's not wise to be generous to sociopaths that will never return it in kind. Red states screwed themselves. This is from, gosh, I'm so glad that we're giving them the twit of the day. I mean, this is unbelievable. For the betterment of all mankind, they said, right? I mean, it's almost like an extension. Almost like it could be an extension of the speech in Star Trek at the beginning of episodes. You know, for the betterment of all mankind, we forge forward, seek out new life, new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. For the betterment of all mankind. My God, man. Breitbart, Texas. The gentleman who answered denied knowing about the tweets and added, Breitbart is the biggest misinformation channel on the planet. So how red states... So they'll never... This is what's crazy. They'll never return it in kind is what they said. They'll never return it in kind. I mean, how many people from the state of Texas alone are going into the flooded areas and trying to help? So they don't need your charity because they'll never return it in kind. Now, what do they mean? What does the leftist mean there, though? The leftist means that they'll never return it in kind by giving all of their money to the government and allowing the government to redistribute it. That's what they mean. That's why they think they're justified in saying our organization, Charitable Humans, doesn't have to give you give you any money. We're not going to give you any money because you don't deserve it because you'll never give it back. Because that's what charity is. Charity is giving somebody something with the expectation of receiving, right? Yeah, that's what love and charity is all about. For those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, and YouTube, you can see for yourself. Here's the tweet. These are the tweets that have been screenshotted. We have Twirl La Deplorable, which has got a pretty cool Les Mis picture for the profile. Charitable humans, not so charitable, nor so human. Pathetic. They hide/delete their account, can't even stand by their evil statement. Joe, what you got?
I would like to point out, okay, for those of you who are watching, in whatever way you're watching the show right now, like actually watching, not just listening, if you look at these tweets, they each of the tweets from the Charitable Humans, the Twitter account, has a CNN link on it.
That's
true. I looked up those. I real quick looked up those because those are micro links.
Yeah, so you looked them up.
I looked them up, and they're all CNN articles about Hurricane Harvey. I didn't read them, but they were just CNN articles about Hurricane Harvey.
We didn't even notice that. That's pretty funny. So you're saying each one of these. So when Charitable Humans wrote, I just can't bring myself to even consider providing aid to any red state. Let them clean up their own mess. They linked to a CNN article saying what? What about that statement are they justifying? Maybe it's just a news, like just general news on Hurricane Harvey. Then we have Charitable Humans. Why? ? They have God and the Republican Party to help them. Red states hate handouts. Let's not offend them. Yes, what's weird is that there are people on the left that really are this misguided, that really are this dark, that really do assume. Well, they're assuming a hypocrisy that, quite frankly, doesn't exist, because people who are Republicans, statistics show, people who are conservative are vastly more charitable than people who are leftists and liberals. Do you know why? Because the left believes so much in government and in their inefficient way of redistributing wealth in the guise and the name of taking care of us, that they say, I don't have to feed the homeless person. The government food trucks, I pay for that already. The government food truck or the soup kitchen lodge or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where they want to go. They don't actually want to be charitable. They want to be able to have an excuse not to be charitable in many cases. Now, some liberals are well-intentioned. They're just wrong. Go ahead.
So the first CNN link that's posted for the first tweet, which is I just can't bring myself to even consider providing aid to any red state, that tweet.
Yeah.
It is literally just a CNN index for Hurricane Harvey making landfall, like any kind of piece of news that they put up in CNN.
Yeah, so like
it's just an index for finding all that stuff.
Yeah, and listen to this. Listen to how much whoever this Charitable Humans person is. Listen to how much how they have a disdain for those who do believe in a higher power. So why do we not want to help a red state? They say because they've got God and the Republican Party to help them. That ought to do it.
Okay, so the next two tweets have the exact same link. It is a link to CNN. It says, and the title is, "Here's how you can help the victims of Hurricane Harvey," and that's what the link is to.
Man, it was pretty sick. Not human at all, really. Then the third tweet, it's not wise to be generous to sociopaths that will never return it in kind. Red states screwed themselves. Fourth tweet, any state that elects a Republican needs to be incinerated. There have to be severe consequences.
And that one...
Incinerated?
And that tweet is linked to a CNN Politics article that says how Trump could tweet the GOP out of its Senate majority.
Okay. Man, isn't it amazing? People want to... We're to the point where we have to politicize everything, right? What's Hurricane Harvey about? This guy's tweeting about them losing their, losing Senate majority. Republicans losing Senate majority. It's just incredible. And again, I mean, let's read for. Oh my goodness, is that a picture of their? Oh my gosh, it's the About Us page. Go down to the About Us page. Oh my goodness, look, here it is. This is from Charitable Humans, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the world for the betterment of all living beings on planet Earth. Charitable Humans is an organization that depends upon the kindness of humans and cutting-edge technology to implement innovative solutions to the world's most dire problems. Charitable Humans is registered like every other tax-exempt organization, but our approach and philosophy toward change is unlike anything that has been tried before. We just ignore people that... Yeah.
You just truly ignore people who need actual help, like victims of a hurricane.
We decided we needed to rethink this thing called charity. So we had meetings about the meetings and meetings about those meetings. And we decided...
And then we had committees for committees.
We should just take people's money. And when the biggest storm disaster to ever hit the United States happens, they're Republicans. So,
you know what that sounds like to me, Paul?
Yeah.
Coney 2012, but there's a difference here where there's actually a problem that their money could help, but instead they're taking it for themselves.
It sounds to me like Ebenezer Scrooge. Like, oh, all right, they're Republicans? Well, let them decrease the surplus population.
What, do you remember Coney 2012?
No, I do not.
Okay, so the idea was that there was an African warlord creating a lot of problems in Africa, and his name was, I think, Joseph Kony, maybe. But so this guy created. Well, the guy Joseph Kony did exist, but he wasn't as bad. He wasn't doing all the terrible things that he said or was being told that he's doing. And this guy literally created this thing, Stop Coney, and it became a fundraising thing. Eventually, it took off so much that people started giving money to this guy. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll take all this money. He didn't do anything with it. He kept it for himself and then closed down Coney much later down the road.
So that's probably
after he had earned millions of dollars. And it's similar to this, except there's actually a problem that needs need their money.
Yeah,
that's being given to them.
Our approach and philosophy toward change is unlike anything that has ever been tried before. We don't accept donations. Oh, hang on a second. It does say we don't accept donations, Joe, and we don't have donors. Instead, we accept what we like to call socially collaborative investments. What does that even mean?
Carefully crafted language meaning we have donors.
Okay, socially collaborative investments contributed by, and it runs out. Okay, so they clearly, I'm going to say this with you, Joe. Yeah, they probably clearly have donors. I wouldn't be surprised, but it also might mean that they're really just a mouthpiece for social justice, Antifa-type communist organizations. I mean, if they're willing to let people who live in a red state, not everybody in Texas, by the way, votes Republican, but apparently they're okay with them dying as well. The twit of the day, ladies and gentlemen, probably the most well-deserved twit of the day ever in the history of this program.
Did you read the statement that's under the picture?
No, I did not.
It says every navigation link to the website for Charitable Humans also points to the same apology page about the social media flap, an apology that does not mention Texas.
There we go. Twit of the day, Charitable Humans, everyone. Charitable Humans.
Follow us on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. Now it's time for the Twit of the Day.
127th Upper Class Twit of the Year show.
Your mommy is a twit.
Thought by many to be this year's outstanding twit.
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board, governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the Bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, we got a listener texting in. They're upset with me, Joe. They're upset with me. They said, come on, Paul. Did I just hear you say that $99 water was supply and demand? You could make the argument about some price increase, but that's simply taking advantage. Oh, it most definitely is taking advantage. But I mean, it's just a value system at that point. A bottle of water was worth a lot of money in Hurricane Katrina. A bottle of water is going to be worth a lot of money. And in this case, it's reported a case of water is worth $99. Going to be worth a lot of money in a situation where nobody has water to drink. The supply is limited. The demand is high. The need is very great because we're talking about life and death here. So yeah, I mean, now am I suggesting that it's right to gouge people? No, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just telling you that's just what's going to happen. I mean, that's why people store food and weapons and guns and ammunition, in case something like this happens. That's why people store water for this very reason, right? And in situations like this, it's also why people buy gold and silver and things like that, to have. And that's more of when an economic crisis. Right now, you could, pretty much say that who would want a silver coin right now, right? If you're down in that mess, no, you'd rather have a bottle of water and food. Because how do you move anything? I mean, you got to have a boat. Now, right now, boats could be sold for probably a pretty penny right now, I figure. Right? Thankfully, there's a lot of Americans going and using their own boats, and they're helping people out. So I want to remind everybody that this broadcast is available for free at paulharrell.com. That's paulharrell.com. We got podcasts. We got video archives for you. And pretty soon, we're going to have a really exciting announcement as well. The phone number, call us, text us, leave us voicemail, 870-275-9799. The Liberty Machine never sleeps. And I do want to caution you, because of the volume of calls that we do receive, sometimes we can't respond to all of them in an immediate fashion. So please bear with us. Same for emails, Facebook messages, and things like that. All right. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Buy our Liberty Machine T-shirts as well. Arkansas, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, be safe.